Hi, my name is Greg Canty, and I'd like to welcome you to the Win Happy podcast. I love chatting to people from all walks of life about their lives and their careers, about the choices they make along the way to pursue their happiness, and what winning actually means to them. I hope you enjoy these conversations as much as I do. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I chat with Andrew Dewar, the serial entrepreneur, theta healer, and co-founder of 5 Year You. Andrew, who grew up with a sister with severe autism, lived in a permanent state of stress, and the worst nearly happened when she actually tried to kill him. This traumatic experience had a huge impact on his life, and it's only in the last few years, after much therapy, that he has rediscovered the real Andrew. Inspired by his own transformation, he co-founded 5 Year You, where people are helped to create the version of themselves that they really want to be. Let's hear from Andrew. Andrew Dewar, a big welcome to the Win Happy podcast. How are you keeping?
I am doing great right now. It's been a great day, and I've been looking forward to this podcast since I woke up. So
I'm recording this in the evening in Cork City in the south of Ireland, and I believe you're tuning in from Canada.
That's right. Yeah, I'm in central Canada. If you put your finger, well, you can see the map behind me. It's just literally right in the dead center of North America and in Canada. So it's you're six. I think we're 6 hours different because you're on British, like Greenwich Mean Time, right?
Yeah,
GMT?
exactly.
Yeah. I actually spent about 6 months in England when I was 18, 19 working. And it's, I always had the time change. I can do it in a second because I was always used to calling home. I'm like, okay, once in a while I call it 9 in the morning and forget that it was 3 in the morning here. So, you learn those lessons as you go through life.
Yeah. And it's more than a time difference. It's a state of mind difference.
Absolutely.
Before we start recording, I was telling you that I met my granddaughter today. Well, she was actually born in New Zealand because my son's wife is from there. So when she was born, it's in the middle of COVID, they were out there. That's one hell of a time difference. And literally, just as you're about to go to sleep, they're waking up. It's not about an hour difference. It's like a state of the mind difference.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I think on one particular day was my birthday, and as a treat, they decided they'd ring me first thing in the morning. I was literally just still waking up, and there's people going, "Hey, happy birthday!" You're like, "Oh, give me a break. Let me wake up at least." So let's imagine for a second, Andrew, that we're sitting on a plane next to each other, and we don't know each other. We've checked in, we're going somewhere. Maybe I'm on the way to Canada for the first time on a visit. You're returning from some speaking gig somewhere, I'm not sure. And you happen to be next to me, and of course, we start a little bit of chit-chat, and we're half an hour in, and we're comfortable enough to ask each other, what do you do for a living? So if I asked you, and Andrew, what do you do?
Well, what I do is I help people become the best versions of themselves now and I do that through energy healing, a combination of energy healing and coaching, through my company, 5 Year You. And that is all about creating the best version of yourself 5 years from now and carving out a path on how you're going to get from here to that place you want to be in 5 years. And we're always on a 5-year journey, but I find that when you take that time to decide where you want to go, you stop living your life on accident and begin living your life on purpose. And that's a huge difference.
Now, if you said that to me on a plane journey, I would be, wow.
Well, to be fair, I am incapable of small talk. So we probably would have had that before they brought the coffee round. So
the peanuts have been eaten, the orange juice has been knocked back, the coffee is there, and I go, okay, all right. Then, of course, I'm going to do my Irish thing. And it's really, really funny. My grandmother, God bless her, it was really important for her and her kind of generation. It wasn't enough to hear your name. They needed to find out, who were you? who the family were, what the family stock was. You know, it was really, really important that she needed to literally visualize the front door that you left every day and the street that you walked down to go wherever you were going. So hopefully you can do that with me. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. It's in winter, it can be one of the coldest places on earth. So it's nice because your face freezes half the year, so you only age half as fast as everybody else. But other than that, it's my life was kind of spent growing up with. I had one sibling. She was my younger sister. She had severe autism, and my mom and dad. And I spent my nights playing hockey like every other Canadian, and kind of just being a kid in the ways that I knew how at the time.
Okay. And tell me, what did your mom and dad do?
My mom stayed home, having a sister with severe autism. She didn't really have the ability to work anymore. So she went on maternity leave when I was born. And by the time my sister came around, she wasn't able to go back to work. My dad was a government worker, and he worked at the same place for 36 years. So it was a very, very kind of basic middle class upbringing.
And describe to me what living was like with a sister who has severe autism.
Well, we said we were going to keep this light.
There you go. You go for it. I'm on the plane, and don't forget. Okay, I told you
we're going below the surface.
Yeah, I told you I'm Irish.
Okay, so there we go. And like I said, I'm capable of having small talk, so this is great. Growing up with my sister was very different. When you have a sibling with autism, I was growing up in the 80s, and the only reference most people would have was Dustin Hoffman's Rain Man.
Yeah.
And she was nothing like that in any sense. There were certain character traits that you might pick up, but it's not like she was good with math or anything like that, though she did have certain things that she excelled at. Her memory was and still is amazing. So growing up with her for the first 12 years, I was her protector. Anybody that kind of came near her or that tried to make fun of her, because kids, they don't understand at this point in evolution, you want to call it. People don't really understand. They're making fun of them. And, I would be the one that stood up for them. And then at a very, very quick junction, my sister tried to kill me. And then we went on to 2 years of abuse, physical abuse for me in my family, which is not really a light topic. But it does. I've only started talking about this in the last couple of years because I've never really faced it. But what it did in my life was it forced me to find safety, because normally when we're growing up, I don't know what it was like for you in Ireland at the time, but your home is supposed to be that place of safety. So I would come home and it would be more violent than anything else I could imagine. And after about 2 years, my parents had to put my sister in foster care, or not foster care, like in a care facility.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting in a lot of ways, because my sister is still of the same mental capacity that she's been at for the last 30 years. She's kind of been at a 4-year-old's brain, but she looks like an adult and all this different stuff. So it's an interesting thing, because when people, I've had to explain it to my kids and all the different things. It's different from what I've heard, but there are similarities when I hear other people talk about their siblings and the dynamics that they are raised at. Different labels, different experiences, but very similar emotions a lot of the time.
Yeah. And the age difference between the two of you, how much was that?
It was 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. She was 2 years younger than me. So she's my baby sister. I have a picture of her on my wall right in front of me. I still love her to pieces. And I always try to remember that, we all have a unique story, and I love learning about everybody else's.
Cool. What's her name?
Kim.
And what age was Kim when a decision was made that it was no longer safe for her to be living in the family home with you?
Yeah, it was about, she was 12, kind of 13, and I was 14, 15 when that happened. all those years kind of blur together. I know my parents know, but we, when we talk about it now, we don't get into the very specifics. We just kind of talk about things and how that shared experience has brought us closer together in the last year or two, actually. So.
And how does a family cope with that? You know, that unit, which effectively was your mum and your dad and you, and, you know, poor sister Kim out of control in her own way. How do you cope? So as you were saying, when you close that door, it's you and them trying to manage this shit, really, isn't it? It's like, oh my God, how do we get through these days and weekends and holidays and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it was interesting for sure. We would there weren't my parents, from what I understand now, were very social people before kids. And then when this happened and things started to change, I mean, things change when you go from being a kidless family to having kids. If you've gone through that, you kind of get that journey. The kidless friends don't really get it, and you know, it's just that hard relating. But we only had like a few close families that we were friends with. And when we were dealing with things in those years, it was challenging. And because there's no playbook for it, you know, there's no internet at that point. And if there is, from what I've seen, there's not a ton on, there's a lot on sibling sexual abuse, but not a lot on sibling physical abuse, though a third of us have experienced some sort of sibling trauma. So at this point, you kind of you do the very normal thing, which is you kind of put on a facade around you, you isolate yourself, and you do your best to make it through. And in those years, as I'm going through this, you know, I'm going through it with a 13, 14, 15-year-old mind. I'm not understanding all the dynamics. I just assume what's happening to me is normal because I don't know what else normal is, right? Our normal is what we're raised with. So when we were going through all of that, you're just kind of getting through the next moment and doing your best to do what you can. For my parents, though, and because I was just telling you before we went on, I'm finishing up my book proposal right now, and it's about sibling trauma and how to recover from it. And I've been given the gift of seeing this whole event, all these events through my parents' eyes as a parent, and having to make these decisions and these challenges that I'm very grateful I haven't had to deal with in my own existence, though I, dealt with it a different way, obviously. And, it's been a blessing in a lot of ways to be able to come back at this and look at it and go, I can't imagine having to choose between my two kids and being in a situation like that. And it's given me a tremendous amount of empathy for them because I had always looked at it through, I think, like 12 to 14-year-old Andy's young eyes and not those of a mature adult. I'm calling myself mature, but I don't really think I am. But I like to pretend.
Not yet, anyway, Andrew.
Not yet.
And I'm trying to think back to that time, when you're 12, 13, hanging around with the boys while you were playing hockey. I would have been playing soccer or football, as we would have called it here. The lads would call over, and they'd stay in your house and you'd stay in theirs. And I presume in your case, you probably weren't inclined to invite pals over to the house or anything like that.
Yeah, like when I think back to those years, there weren't a lot of people, a lot of new friends coming over. I had friends that I had grown up with on the street, so they knew about them. And when I see them in passing, they'll still ask, how's Kimmy doing? Because that's how they knew her, was little Kimmy. And even though she hates being called that now, you can't call her that. But, any new friends and stuff like that, it didn't really happen. So I kind of took to, in those years, more and more hanging out at my friends' houses and, wherever I could go spend my time. That's kind of where I went because it was just calmer and safer and easier to be quite honest. And it was easier for my parents too, because they didn't have to kind of mitigate that surprise anger that would just flare up inside of her for really no reason. It was, there was no provocation. There was nothing like that. It would just be, it's like a switch got flipped and you were it. And it was, yeah.
Yeah, I presume you were on guard all of the time.
Yeah, I was always on guard. And that kind of led to 30 years of being on guard after that. And it's only in the last few years that I recognized that because my body was starting to tell me a whole bunch of things that I wasn't listening to. And our bodies will do that. I didn't really understand it at the time. I've had to learn about it. I've been drinking from a fire hose the last 3 years on all this stuff, but I would be walking around with my hands in fists. And I just kind of thought that was normal to be that tense. And, I would go places and somebody would like put their hand on my shoulder and they'd be like, wow, you're really tense. And that's just how I was. I didn't know calm. I didn't know relaxed. I was I think when I was talking to people about it, it's like my sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves were like they were on guard all the time. And there was nothing that was just, a pathway in my brain that had been created 30 years ago.
Yeah. There's a good pal of mine. And when he was growing up, his sister had a particular disability and the family were always worried about her. There was always a worry about his sister, what might happen. And she sadly passed away. But he's in this period of always having to be anxious about something.
Yes.
So his normal is being anxious. And lovely guy, lovely wife, lovely kids. But one of his challenges is he's now nearly inventing things to be anxious about, because he nearly needs to be anxious in a particular way. And they're very, very peculiar things that he just obsesses about. And we were trying to figure it out. And I think it was just a case of his normal was being on high alert and anxious. So when that was taken away, oh my God, what am I going to replace this norm with? Okay, so the conversations around the kitchen table in your house, I presume they were kind of super stressed all of the time. So you're like wound up to 90, were they?
I was so lucky. My mom to say she's a saint is giving her a bad name. She is just miraculous. She did a great job. Her attitude, and I had taken this with my kids, was that she would say, I can't help how you go out into the world and what happens to you, but I can make sure that you're smiling when you leave the door. And so she would always make sure that I was as happy as I could be. And that was really, really, really nice. My mom was, and is, she's just a wonderful person. Like everybody that meets her just loves her immediately. She just glows. She's kind, caring, thoughtful, everything. And my father was a great provider and is a great provider. He's retired now. I think of what it would have been like in an age like that to have this situation forced on you where you don't really know how to handle things. And what they taught me, whether they realize it or not, is resilience, adaptability. And, my mom's taught me to look at the bright side through everything. And she's always supported me in every decision I've made, good or bad. And bless her for that. And my dad's come in on the other side and filled that out as being the more kind of practical approach. Think about this. So they both have their cautions, as you would when you have that kind of a situation. But I definitely can relate to your friend with the anxiety and all those things. I myself, had that. I just didn't know to label it. When you grow up thinking that everything is this way, you don't. It's like, I don't know. We always use, it's like trying to explain snow to somebody in Hawaii. They're not going to understand it until you feel it, right? Yeah. It's just the way it is. So, or in my case, trying to explain to my kids what life was like before the internet, just, you don't know what you don't know. And it can be really hard to relate, but I think given the times and the resources and everything that were available, and like back then, autism wasn't as prevalent as it is now. It was a lot less. I can't remember what the stats were, but there's a lot more people being born with autism now. But my parents handled it like stars, and very proud of them for that.
Cool. And what was your escape?
At the time, it was Nintendo, because that was pretty new and that was awesome. And then I really, really fell into music. and I would sing, I would play guitar. That was any chance I had, I was having my hands on a guitar. I got a job at a music store. I used
Hey,
to sing and play in cafes when that was the cool thing to do back in the day. And I absolutely loved music. And that was where I kind of fell into, and just still music, my place where I go to anytime I get a chance to, that's where I go.
yeah, well, that was my story as well. I love music. I actually ended up owning record stores, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
cool.
a little chain of them. I tell people that was the dream of a 13-year-old. Yeah, so was it Rush and Brian Adams or
Well, good for you knowing that. I mean, if you owned a music store or record
I
stores,
should
you,
know
you
that.
definitely know your music, but that's still pretty good to pull out of your
Yeah.
off the top of your head. I was never a big Rush fan. I've only started listening to them once. Like when it comes on the radio now, I'll be good and listen to it. For me at the time, it was a lot of alternative music. Then once I came over to England in the mid 90s, I really got into, like, I think Robbie Williams and all that stuff was kind of big at that point. So like it was Spice Girls and stuff, which I didn't really like before I got to England. And then I got immersed in the culture and then kind of, got brainwashed really nicely. And that's always stuck. But I would often say, like, I don't care what kind of music it is. I love if it's a good song. A good song is a good song to me. And whether that's country, rap, hip hop, alternative, whatever, I like it if it resonates well with me, and if it doesn't, then it's just
Yeah, fair enough. The other thing we have in common is both of us are accountants. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. So, how did that disease afflict you, Andrew? How did that begin?
Oh, it. I only have a couple of memories of like my childhood and how this happened. So when I was in grades 5 or 6, we got moved to a new school because the school was too small for the kids. So we split up, and there was like 20 of us in grade 5 and grade 6 together. And one of my friend's dads was an accountant. And of course, we made fun of him because we thought that all that meant, as grade 5 and 6 do, all we knew is that that meant you were counting. And he said, no, that's not what it is. Like, they run companies like Coke and all these other big companies. And I thought, cool, that's what I'll do. I'll be an accountant. And I never checked in on that decision until, like, after I was an accountant, and I probably should have done that at some point sooner, but it was good. There was times where I wanted to stop in the schooling and stuff because it's a long process, as you know. And my dad told me, he said, like, you just need to do it and get it done. And the reason why it's hard is because not everybody does it. And worst comes to worst, you always have something you can fall back on as you move forwards. But I mean, now I'm just jealous of you owning music stores because that was really the goal at the back then. And so, yeah.
Yeah, well, I always thought the singer in Rush had a very squeaky voice. It wasn't very credible to me. And yeah, Thin Lizzy was the first concert I went to. And yeah, Phil Lynott was very, very inspiring. For me, accounting was a simple thing. My path was you could work by day, study by night. And someone explained to me this is a really interesting path to business. And that's what accounting was for me. It was like, wow, at 17 or 18, you'd be taken by one of the partners. You go out to a business, you're sitting at the boardroom table. And it's really weird. Like, people could be working in those companies for 20, 30 years, and they'd never get near the boardroom. You're an 18, a 19-year-old kid, and you're at the boardroom listening to the owners and their conversations and their money troubles and all that kind of stuff. So you were very privileged. And it was the business part that I was just so interested in. So did you go into practice, or did you go into industry, or what happened?
I went into practice for a little bit, and then I went into government, and then transitioned into on the online world stuff because it's way more interesting and dynamic, and it kind of fits my needs better. I love to write. I love to have conversations. I love helping people, and I just find that this is the right way to go.
Okay. I read in your bio, this boy is a serial entrepreneur. And of course, I was looking at your LinkedIn trying to say, okay, God, tell me, what has he done? And I couldn't see any of this evidence. You know, that little trail that nearly everyone has now on their LinkedIn profile. So come on, Andrew, it's spill your guts.
So it's okay. So yeah, I hadn't started a LinkedIn profile until the last couple of months when I'd always built up brands and everything behind the scenes. So I own, I think, 7 websites. They have a variety of products that they sell. They make money in a various different ways. And like, so there's products, there's courses, there's ads, there's email lists. I love the dynamics of the online world. But I never really cared if my name was associated with any of these things. And it was only in the last kind of year or so after getting divorced and being on my own here that I decided that I need to do something that fills my heart, because I hadn't done that. And that's why there's nothing on LinkedIn. And it's one of those things where I know I need to get to it, but I really am focused on 5-Year You and the coaching energy healing with people, because I find that with most of us, whether you realize it or not, you probably have these limitations that you've put on, just like your friend with the anxiety and needing to find something to be anxious about. We all have these things that kind of hinder us and we want to shed them. And I've just, through my recovery and my healing journey the last few years, this is where it's kind of led me. And I've kind of taken my hands off the wheel at this point. I'm like, okay, wherever we're going, we'll just see where it goes. I mean, I couldn't have predicted I'd be talking to you a year ago, and here we are, and I just love it. So, I think that's kind of the joy of life, is when you stop trying to be safe and control everything, you open yourself up to some magical, amazing things. And it's just been it's been a blessed journey since.
Okay, so that path to a career in assisting other people in their personal growth and everything else, that doesn't happen magically. What happened? You obviously went through a lot of stuff yourself to arrive at that point.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So what happened for me was, because of the trauma I endured with my sister, what happened was I was constantly anxious and I wasn't paying attention to it. I decided that the way to stay safe was to keep everybody else around me happy. So if people wanted to do something, I would just say yes, go along. It's easier to go along to get along kind of mindset. And all the while this is going on, I'm getting like this indigestion burning kind of at the bottom of my throat, top of my chest. And I would go to acupuncture to because I didn't want to take medicine. I wasn't really happy with how that was all going. So I was doing this and eventually got down to the point where I cut everything out of my diet, and I was still having it. And it was suggested that maybe my head and my heart were disagreeing with each other, and that this was an emotional thing, not. So it was in that moment that I realized that I had been living for everyone else, and that while I had made everyone safe and everyone feel good, it was all on the outside, and on the inside, I was rotting, for lack of a better word. And that kind of catapulted me into like, well, how do I get better from this? I don't want to go do the typical talk therapy for years and hope that it heals. So it was suggested that I'm going to narrow it down so you don't hear the day by day story, because we don't have time for all of that. But I ended up going to do EMDR. And it's when you go and you kind of go through the trauma. And the idea is that you kind of pull the bottom Jenga block out and the whole belief structure on it kind of collapses. And then you can form new synapses in your brain. And I would go do this, and I went really hard at it. And I would walk out sometimes feeling like I had just, lost 30 pounds. And then other days I would feel so wiped out energetically and emotionally from it that I'd have to sleep in my car because I didn't have the wherewithal to drive home at that point. So knowing as I kind of wrapped that up, because I was working on the trauma from my sister at that point, and then I went to somebody suggested, like you should try this Reiki person. And I said, well, what's Reiki? And they said, I really don't know, but I feel good every time I leave. And I'm like, okay, well,
That sounds good.
I kind of became, yeah, it sounds good. I mean, that's a great pitch. So I said like, okay. And I finally, went to, this person, and I don't know if you've ever had Reiki done on you, but it's like energy healing, and they put their hands on you and everything. And she's a bit of she was a medium as well. And she was saying like, so, cause I've never done any Reiki from really anybody else but her. She's been wonderful. And I tend to find, if I find a good person, I stick with them, because why bother? And she said like, your sacral chakra, which is your energy and everything, it's in a cage, and we freed it. And I, not knowing what the word chakra meant either, I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to Google that when I get home. And she just kind of cautioned me. She's like, drink lots of water. You may feel a little bit tired today. Don't try to, kind of limit things out. I'm like, sure, I got this. Oh, okay, energy person. This was kind of neat. And I went home, and it was Saturday at around noon, and I slept till Monday morning.
Oh my God.
Just, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so clearly there's things that an accountant doesn't see on a spreadsheet that actually exist in life. And that was, and that had always been my block. It's like, if I can't see it, I don't really understand it, right? And I don't know, we deal in this physical world, and I really had tuned myself out to anything else. And so I was going to her and kind of healing in that respect. And then she suggested that I try theta healing. And I said, well, what's theta healing? And it's like, well, it's different than what I do, but it can work on your beliefs, your limiting beliefs and feelings and all these things. And I said, well, I'm kind of the crash test dummy of personal growth at this point, and that's kind of what I dub myself as. And I'm like, okay, so let's go give this a try. And I went to the lady, and she's like, well, what do you want to work on? I'm like, well, how does this work? She's like, well, you tell me what you want to work on, and we'll talk about it. And I said, okay, well, I kind of won the outside game of, like I paid off my house, car, have all these things. And I just want to feel abundant. I don't feel abundant. I don't know if you've ever had that, where it's like, you're just always wondering and always worried about money, which is not that's a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset, which is like, it's always going to work out. And so we did an hour of digging and stuff, and same kind of warning, like you're going to be challenged in the next little while. Look for signals that, that you're, that abundance is showing up. And I'm like, so I'm leaving fully expecting to go home and sleep a couple more days, but I don't. And like a month later, I get a phone call saying, hi, you entered this online contest. I'm like, yeah, sure I did. And they're like, no, this is from this place. And I'm like, oh, like, well, what did I win? It's like, well, you won a $5,000 trip to anywhere in the world on this site. And it was at that moment that I'm like, there is so much that I don't know or understand, that I am just going to figure out as much as I can so that I can help people with this stuff. And so that, again, as I'm going through things, at this point, I'm getting I'm getting divorced, and I'm on my own, and all these things are happening on the outside too. So there's a lot of 3D world stuff happening. And then I went to this metaphysical kind of rocks store, because I love I love rocks. I really do. They're very fascinating to me. And I'm there, and I look up on the board, and it says theta healing classes last time offered. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm here. It's my birthday. Why not? My guides, so to speak, I believe I didn't before, but I believe I have guides and angels and all these things that I can't physically prove, but I know they're there. And I've had way too many experiences to disregard them. And
spoken like a true accountant, Andrew.
Yeah, well, it's hard, right? Like, because when you grow up, when I'm telling this story to people, I always like kind of pause and go, again, accountant, and it's kind of like, I started off in this one direction, and the universe kind of like grabbed me by the hair and is like, nope, you need to go over this way. Yeah. And you're like, but it was planned out over here. And they're like, yeah, we know. And it's really cute that you did that, thinking that's the way it was going to go, but we have something bigger and better for you. And so in the last year or so, I've just kind of put my hands up and gone, Okay, show me where I'm supposed to go, and I will just kind of go. And I found that like the miraculous has truly happened over the last couple of years by prying my fingers off the steering wheel and letting life kind of lead the way a little bit more.
So you are now a theta healer, isn't that right?
Yeah, a theta healer. Yes, that's right.
So come on.
THETA.
Yeah.
So it's an energy healer. We use power of creator to help discover your root issues on something and to release them and replace them with something else. So, and
Is
I do
that
sessions
like
online.
every debit must have a corresponding credit?
I've never heard it put like that. And that is such an accountant joke that I mean, there's like one other person that's going to laugh at that, but they're going to laugh hard at that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
Good. I liked it. I liked it. I really liked it. Yeah. So it's kind of like the way I like to look at it is like the 5-year U logo is the tree of life. And the way I look at it is if you come to me right now and you have an issue on something that you want to work on, and you're like, I need to work on having money. Okay, well, why do you need to have money? Do you not have it? And then what my job is in that moment is to kind of get down to the root belief. So we'll take that leaf on the tree, we'll follow it down the branch all the way into the root. And then we're going to go, okay, so the root isn't that you need money. It's that you were told you weren't worthy to have money when you were 4 years old and your dad gave you 2 pennies and said, don't lose them. And you ate them. That's a little too specific of my life to share, but I think I just kind of did. So that's okay. But, you find out that it's not the cause, it's just a symptom. So we're going to go down and we're going to figure out what that is. And then we use power of creator, universal energy, God, whatever you subscribe to. It doesn't matter. It just matters that you believe and you have a desire to be healed. And we bring in the new beliefs, we bring in the new energy. And again, you're going to, after it's all done, if it usually takes, sometimes people are not ready for that. And that's always the challenge, because I've had that myself where I've gone to people, I'm like, I just want this. And they'll come back and go, you actually have to want it for us to do it. You don't just say you want it and we give it to you and it happens, right? Like, because a lot of times there's like, yeah, I want to be a millionaire, right? That's, I think, like kind of the mindset of everybody. Oh, if I had $1 million. But the reality is, when you ask somebody, well, what would you do if you have $1 million? They don't go, oh, I would put it in the bank. They go, well, then my parents would want money and my siblings would want money and my friends, I wouldn't be able to trust my friends. So everybody's got like these issues that are preventing them. So my job is to decide to help people figure out where they want to go and then figure out the roadblocks that they have while they go through it, so I can help them with it. So,
okay.
And everybody's different.
Yeah. So,
but money's a good one to use.
Like my grandmother, I'm going to keep on poking Andrew.
Go ahead.
Your marriage. So,
yes,
your wife was obviously married to the troubled version of Andrew.
Yes.
And as Andrew sorted his shit out through various therapies and Reiki instructors and different things. And of course, we all try stuff, don't we? You want to get better.
Yeah.
There's something wrong, which I guess is the first thing to realize. You're on the path then, and that's pretty cool. So the Andrew who's sorting himself out, is it a case of she no longer recognizes that Andrew?
No, it's the case that Andrew doesn't know Andrew.
Okay.
And nobody knows Andrew. And it came to a point that while my ex-wife was wonderful and I have nothing but admiration for her, I wasn't with her for the reasons that a husband should be with a wife. And it wasn't, I'll get through this one. Just give me a second. The reality is that it's when you don't know who you are and you spent 44 years trying to be everything to everybody else, there's a lot of layers you need to unpeel. And not everybody's going to want you to unpeel them, because it's a lot safer for you to be the version of yourself you've always been. And I had to make a choice at that moment of choosing myself for the first time. And it's not fair to her that somebody was with her for safety. And I mean, I love her. She's an amazing person. When I moved out, I moved 5 minutes away so I can be as close to my kids as possible because my kids are my world. And I'm talking lightly about a lot of things that have happened. They don't always feel light in those moments, but I moved into this place here and I literally got in and I said, well, I know the things I need. I own a home website that literally gives a free checklist to 1 million people over the last few years about new houses. And I looked and I'm like, I don't know what kind of couch I like. I don't know what color walls. I don't know anything that I like. And I've been rediscovering Andy, and that's the boy that died in the lake when he was 12 years old. And I'm bringing him back to life and discovering him. And it's not always easy, but that doesn't mean it's not worth doing.
Yeah, it sounds like you're nearly someone who had traumatic memory loss, and you were brought back to all of these people. And you're like, no, I just need to discover me again and start from there.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And if you hadn't wanted to go there, that I would have been totally cool with that and everything, and we would have erased that from the recording.
No, it's okay. I'm always aware of my kids and my ex, and I want to make sure that they're always respected and that they understand that nobody did anything wrong. And if somebody did something wrong, it was me 30 plus years ago that locked me away. And I send energy every day. I do as much as I can to help in all the ways I know how. But the truth is, it's on me. I own up to the things that have happened because somehow I believe I chose all these experiences long before I got here. And while they've probably chosen their experiences too, that doesn't mean that they understand that or anything else. Not that I understand it any more than anybody else does either, but trying to make sense of it.
Yeah, I'm going to share something with you which may help you a tiny bit. So sure. I separated when I was in my late 20s, and 2 kids, they would have been 6 and 3, totally different set of circumstances to what you were chatting about. And, you're talking about very, very Catholic Ireland and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I remember my mother saying to me, yeah, how could you do this to me? And fair play to her. That was a real thing for her. And I remember there was a good friend of mine, kind of friend, half cousin. He passed away in a motorbike accident in Italy. And his mum would have been great pals with my mother. And she never said this to me, but I heard it after. I think she had said to my aunt, that's what we used to call her, I think she said to her that she would have preferred, in my case, if I had died because of all of that. And I remember going to a session, and it was, I'm trying to find the very right words to describe it. But basically, there were these sessions for people who were the parents of separated children. That's how they did it. And I remember them saying, if you could imagine a whole room full of people who had all separated, and what they said was, whether you like it or not, you're still parents to these children. And that's okay, yeah. I get that and all that kind of thing. And what they were saying was that when you went into all of these marriages and everything, or these relationships, I'm sure none of you had the intention of blowing them up and them not working out. And you were like, okay, I get that. So they were saying that you need to forgive each other at some point. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's easier said than done depending on the circumstances. But they said the very first step to forgiving the other person is you need to forgive yourself.
Absolutely.
And Andrew, I swear to God, it felt like the roof opened up and this weight that I was carting around to myself just floated up into the sky, thinking, I'm not that bastard I was calling myself every single minute of every day through guilt and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that's any help or anything. So 5-year you, and how did that start? And I know you're the co-founder of it with Catherine Collins, or Kat Collins, I think you call her.
Yeah, Kat. Yeah, we've co-owned all the websites together for half a decade now. And the deal was when we started out, and this goes back to the LinkedIn thing, was like, I'm going to hide behind the scenes. I will do all the tech stuff. I'll do everything. You go be the face because you're already doing that. You're good at talking. You're good at all the things. And she's like, well, you're good at talking too. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I never want to get on these things. I'm just not there. And respectably, we have our strengths. I am good at getting things done very fast. She is very good at doing things accurately. So I get the bulk done, and then she does everything really, really nice. Anyway, 5 Year You, it's my heart's project. It's my mission. I think about it a lot and why I didn't do it sooner. But the reason was that I wasn't ready to do it. I had to go through these changes to really understand it, to help people better. I mean, reading divorce in a book isn't the same as going through it, being abused, recovering from it. All these challenges that I went through, I can now use to help others either navigate it or simply just be sympathetic to what they do, what they're going through. I was definitely filled with a lot of judgment growing up. And I try to release that judgment, especially starting with myself, because I believe that self forgiveness is the first step of self love. And I did not love myself 3 years ago. In fact, I had somebody tell me I needed to, and I cried in front of them for the first time for 45 minutes. I sobbed uncontrollably. I did not love myself. And this is before all the stuff we're talking about today. And now I do. And it's so sorry, I'm rambling here, but 5 Year You we're starting a podcast and we're building it from the ground up. But the ultimate idea is to help people create that version of themselves that they know they want to be, and create a community around that so that we can help them move in that direction in whatever way, shape, or form that takes, whether it's the coaching or energy healing or just having that community. I'm also a huge advocate for men's mental health. I think there's been a lot of toxic masculinity is kind of the word that gets thrown around a lot. And I can't really speak to that. I've sat in my share of dressing rooms and I just never related to the people. I was always the very super sensitive one. Even my mom said last week, you're very sensitive. And that's coming from this loving person. And she's even said, you're too sensitive. I'm like, well, yeah, that's my superpower. I mean, I can feel your emotion when you're talking about your mom and your divorce. And my heart goes out to you. My heart goes out to everyone. My partner always jokes with me. She's like, you literally love everyone. I'm like, I do. And it's a blessing and a curse. And I want to help. I want to help the world in whatever way I can. And this is how I start doing that. So right now we've created a home study kit for people to do the 5 Year You home study. And ideally, the end result of this is I'd love to do kind of immersion events where you go somewhere after you've done the home study kit and you go and you live as that 5 Year You version of yourself, of who you want to be, so that you kind of cement in that energy and what it's like to be around other people that are wanting to grow in that way. So that's 5 Year You.
Yeah, isn't that one of the big regrets that people talk about on their deathbed, that they didn't live their authentic life?
Yes.
And as well as, spending time with loved ones and all of that thing.
I think that's the biggest thing. And that's when I talk to people, we want to help you live your authentic life. You deserve it. Everybody does. It's not for everyone. I get that. We all have our calling and our journey. But if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I'm ready for that next level, that next step, maybe that's why you got this playing for you today.
Okay. And to live that more fuller, authentic life, and weeks and days, they start with mornings. So tell me about your micro magic mornings.
So I am not a morning person. I am now, but I was the one that I think I wore out the snooze button on a few alarm clocks in my day. And part of it was that, you just kind of get up and you're like, it's almost like you stumble out of bed and you stumble through the day, and stumble through life, which again comes back to the living life on purpose, not by accident. So Micro Mornings is just a free download. It's a free program that we offer. And what it does is it helps you start your day with purpose. For me, I would get up and you just create like this little micro habit for yourself. And it's something that you set up so that you can't fail. So whether it's like a really tiny kind of atomic habit like James Clear talks about, where it's like you floss one tooth, or you do one stretch, you create this kind of 5-minute routine in the morning. And then from that, you can stretch it out as long as you want or make it small. But the second that happens is that when you wake up, you know what you're doing, you know why you're getting out of bed, and you feel like you have a sense of purpose to start your day. And I found when I do that, your life changes. I'm on, I think, like almost 1,200 days in a row of meditating. And meditation's amazing and we all talk about it, but the streak is what gets me up every morning now. It's like, I enjoy doing this. I've altered my routine as things go. I try things out. If they work, great. If they don't, I'll just go back to the things that do work. But having that routine has made such a difference in my life every morning. So we like to offer that to people as a thank you for listening to the show. And it's you can go to 5yearyou.com/mornings and download it for free.
So how many days did you say of consecutive meditation?
1,200.
Yeah. And that's pretty cool. And, we do social media consultancy. And one of the questions I used to ask people on those social media sessions was, did you brush your teeth today? You're like, wow, of course I did. Okay, that's pretty cool. And is it something you need to think about? You don't. You just do it automatically. No. And then I think, well, did you promote your business today? And that was the kind of point I used to make. But while you're talking about your 1,200, I did my Duolingo today. I'm not sure if you do Duolingo. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And I'm learning Italian. And I'm on 974. And of course,
awesome.
It's gamifying the damn thing, isn't it? And it won't let you get your warnings about you're going to break your streak. And I think finding the habit is the most difficult thing. And if you can bring in good habits into your life, that will give you a better life. So if I can kick off my day with your Micro Magic Mornings and tuning into you and Kat and the podcast, I was listening to one today. I heard her talking about you being super quick and super organized and all that kind of stuff. How often do you podcast?
We publish once a week on Wednesdays. It's a new podcast, and whenever I start something, I try to give myself a long window for things. So we talked about this, like when we were building our websites, we're like, okay, are we going to do this for 3 years? Because it's going to take that long for traction and everything else. Well, with this, we're like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to do this for the next 8 years at least. And when you do that, and suddenly I don't have the pressure to, hit 1 million downloads in the next month or anything like that. It's like I can build steam. So yeah, we publish every Wednesday. So the next one comes up tomorrow. It's a Tuesday. We're recording this, and it's been very on purpose for me, and I really enjoy it. I really love going on other people's podcasts, meeting people like yourself. You're wonderful, by the way. You are like an awesome interviewer.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't think you have like maybe you do, and it's
there's no script.
Been leading me. You've been so authentic and attentive, and that is it's a gift that you don't see too often in people in the real world. Yeah. And like most people are on their phones and stuff, but you're here, you're present, and I can tell you care too, which is really, really nice.
In a way, Andrew, what's the point if you don't do that? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm here on a Tuesday evening, and it's cool. I'm not, like what you said, I'm not chasing downloads. I like to have really good conversations with good people. We didn't know each other before today, but we were back and forth on email a little bit, and I saw your bio and I thought, yeah, this boy is interesting, the accountant and all that kind of stuff. So that's really cool. I think it's important when you are podcasting, just not to worry about that stuff. I think you need to enjoy the conversations, because if you don't enjoy them, that's going to come across so badly. you need to forget about it. Follow your curiosity and your interest. And if you're not interested anymore, just stop.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you see that with some shows where they kind of lose it and then they come back like a year later because you can just tell they lost something and then it came back. And it's beautiful when it does.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so what's happiness to you?
What's happiness to me? Happiness is getting up every morning, doing what you were meant to do, helping the people that are looking for help, and going to bed knowing you did your best with the day, feeling satisfied, loving yourself even more than when you started the day.
Okay. And to use a hockey analogy or a football analogy.
Oh, good.
That feeling you get when you've put the ball in the back of the net. What gives you that feeling now?
Oh, I was a prolific goal scorer when I played hockey. So, and when you said that, I just had this like expansive, when I help someone, when I can see the help, if I have a meeting with a client and we get into the dirt and we kind of get that root cause out, and we put something better in place, and I see it. Because this weird thing has happened as I open up. I can start to feel people's emotions, but I can also feel inside their bodies, which again, accountant doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's happening. And so what really it makes my heart expand and feel good is when I work with people and we get them past that thing that's been holding them back. We get them past the roadblock that they've put up and didn't even realize it was there. That. And the other thing, to be a little less, to be a little more 3D accountant, finishing a good puzzle is the thing that also makes me go, I love puzzles. So it's that thrill of like kind of putting the last 5 in and they all go in really fast. Oh, that's a good feeling. That is really good.
And I have one last question for you. We've both accumulated bits and bobs of wisdom along the way. If you have to give one little thing to someone, one little piece of advice or one thing you'd whisper in their ear that you've learned that you think would be very useful to them, what would you say?
Love yourself.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool. You didn't do a lot of that, did you?
No.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. And I do now. And it's very obvious when I meet people, those people that love themselves. And it's very apparent when the people don't, and they need that. Well, like the song says, well, I'll go back to the 60s, but, good old Burt Bacharach, what the world needs now is love, sweet love, right? And it does, but that starts within us. What was that, Burt Bacharach? I said it and I'm like, I'm getting that mixed up again. I get those names
I'm going to be Googling Burt Bacharach now after this one.
Everybody can Google it and correct us. But yeah, I believe that what we are really, really needing is when you love yourself and you can accept yourself on your journey and accept that you're not perfect, accept that you make mistakes, just forgive yourself and accept who you are and that you're here having a human experience, you'll start to look at everyone else around you with more empathy and love. And when you look at them with that love, the world around you starts to get better. We don't have to heal the whole world. We have to focus on healing ourselves, feeling good, loving ourselves, and then the world around us starts to change.
Okay, I lied. I did say one last question. I'm going to go one more. Anything to say to those accountants out there?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Don't look beyond the spreadsheet.
Yeah, exactly.
No, exactly. I would just say to the accountants out there that are listening to this, there's a big wide world out there. And the second you open your brain to what's not in your computer and what's not the widgets and stuff like that, some pretty cool stuff can happen. And I hope you have that in a nice and peaceful way.
Yeah. I think the thing I tell the accountants, and of course I work in marketing now, so I always reckon the accountants were good storytellers in arrears. You're always telling a story of last year, last month. No, okay. Sometimes you're budgeting and stuff. But I think, make sure you get involved in the future stories because you can do that as well. And that's kind of pretty cool.
I like that.
Andrew, thank you so much. Thank you for being a wonderful, win-happy guest. I loved our conversation. It's
Me
good.
too.
It's given me energy for the rest of the week and a bit more. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. I truly appreciate it.
Good man yourself. Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.